Bihari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha, Jaya Girivaradhari. Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pesthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Pachatya Deshatarine. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. श्री श्री जगन्नाथ बलदेव सुभद्रा महारानी की, श्री श्री प्रहलाद नरसिंह देव भगवान की, स्निग्धाई गौर सुंदर की, तीत पावन शिला प्रभुपाद की, समस्त गौर भक्त वृंद की. Reading from Gantra Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 12, entitled as Dhruva Maharaja Goes Back to Godhead. Text number 13. Text number 14. Gantra Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Let's chant together. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet Nashtaprayesu Abhadresu Nityam Bhagavat Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. Evam Bahu Savam Kalam Mahatma Vichalendriyah Trivargaupaikam Nitva Trivargopaikam Nitva Putrayadan Nipasanam Evam Bahu Savam Kalam Mahatma Vichalendriyah Trivargopaikam Nitva Putrayadan Nipasanam Evam Bahu Savam Kalam Mahatma Vichalendriyah Trivargopaikam Nitva Putrayadan Nipasanam. Evam Bahu Savam Kalam Mahatma Vichalendriyah Trivargopaikam Nitva putrayada nripasanam evam bahu savam kalam mahatma vichalendriyah trivargopaikam nitva putrayada nripasanam evam. Word for word meaning evam, thus, bahu, many, savam, years, kalam, time, maha atma, great soul, avichal indriya, without being disturbed by sense agitation. Three varga, three kinds of worldly activities. Aupaikam, favorable for executing. Nitva, having passed. Putraya, to his son. Adata, he handed over. Nrip asanam, the royal throne. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation. The self-controlled great soul, Dhruva Maharaj, thus passed many years favorably executing three kinds of worldly activities, namely religiosity, economic development, and satisfaction of all material desires. Thereafter, he handed over the charge of the royal throne to his son. Translation. The self-controlled great soul Dhruva Maharaja thus passed many years favorably executing three kinds of worldly activities, namely religiosity, economic development, and satisfaction of material desires, of all material desires. Thereafter, he handed over the charge of the royal throne to his son. Purport. Perfection of materialistic life is suitably attained by the process of observing religious principles. This leads automatically to successful economic development, and thus there is no difficulty in satisfying all material desires. Since Dhruva Maharaja, as a king, had to keep up his status quo, or it would not have been possible to rule over the people in general. He did it perfectly, but as soon as he saw that his son was grown up and could take charge of the royal throne, he immediately handed over the charge and retired from all material engagements. One word used here is very significant, avichal indriya, which means that he was not disturbed by the agitation of senses, nor was his sensory power diminished. Although in years he was a very old man, since he ruled over the world for 36,000 years. Naturally, one may conclude that he became very old, but factually his senses were very young, and yet he was not interested in sense gratification. In other words, he remained self controlled. He performed his duties perfectly according to the materialistic way. That is the way of behavior of great devotees. Srila Raghunath Dasa Goswami, one of the direct disciples of Lord Chaitanya, was the son of a very rich man. Although he had no interest in enjoying material happiness, when he was entrusted with doing something in managing the state, he did it perfectly. Srila Gaur Sundar advised him. Srila Gaur Sundar advised him, from within, keep yourself and your mind completely aloof, but externally execute the material duties just as they need to be done. This transcendental position can be achieved by devotees only. As described in Bhagavad Gita, while others, such as yogis, try to control their senses by force, devotees, even though possessing full sensory powers, Do not use them because they engage in higher transcendental activities. Om Tat Sat. Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langhayate Girim Yatkripatamaham Bande Shri Guru Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Sri Chaitanya Iswaram. This chapter is titled as Dhruva Maharaja Goes Back to Godhead. It's a very important chapter for all of us. We all want to go back to Godhead. Why do we want to go back to Godhead? Yeah, for that liberation is enough. There, Sayujya Mukti is there. It is said when we get that Mukti means we become free from birth and death. Why specifically we want to go back to Godhead? Eternal happiness. What else? Yeah, that is our permanent place. What is the business where there? So, the Jive Swarup hai Krishna Nitya Das. We are all spirit soul, we are all Atma. Now, eternal occupational characteristics of Dharma, Sanatan Dharma, duty, is to serve the Lord. So, when we are situated in natural position, we experience the happiness, as Prabhu said, we experience the happiness which we are looking for. That is comes by serving the Lord. In this material world, we are trying to serve our senses, but the senses are never satisfied. We see that how much ever we try to satisfy the senses, more it starts blazing. Let's compare like there is a fire, and fire needs fuel. So if you put the fuel, then fire increases. So like that, the senses demands keeps on increasing. It is never satisfied. Our mind remains dissatisfied. So in this material world, though we want to be happy, but we cannot experience the happiness. And that happiness comes by serving the Lord. So our goal of going back to Godhead is to serve the Lord. That is the goal, to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Here we see that Dhruva Maharaja, he lived for 33,000 years. I mentioned 36,000 years he lived. 36,000 years. He could live so many years because he was living in different age. It's not, we cannot map from now and understand. This is a Kali Yuga. We can see the life span is very less. As the time we go back in Satyuga, the people were able to live long life. Even this time we see just 100 years before, people were living 100 years. And now we see that hardly people live 100 years. Of course, now also we see few people they live 100 years, but most of people die much earlier. That average death has come down very much. So as we go back in time, we see that people's ages, they used to live more and more time. In many regions, the vitality force was very much, their immunity was more, the environment was clean, and people were living in more in Sattva Guna. So their lifespan was naturally more. They had subtle powers. Now we have lost we are just living in a mechanical world. We see that as Mahabharata and Ramayana, this all great war were fought, then all sorts of weapons were used just by power of mantra. So people had this kind of divine powers by which they had longevity. In Mahabharata, we see that Bhishma Dev had blessings from his father, had to die on his wish. So that kind of potency was there that people were able to stretch their life. So, in as a mechanical understanding, we know that the yogis, Astang yogis, they have siddhis. They are able to control their breath, and by doing this, they able to stretch their life. Even now, also there are some yogis. Will find them in Himalayas. They are living for a very long time, 300 years, 400 years. How they are able to do? Because they control their breathing. They are like, according to Vedic knowledge, our life is counted not number of years, with the number of breath we take. And if we control our breathing, then we can actually stretch our lifespan. So here Dhruva Maharaja, he lived 36,000 years. And though he lived 36,000 years, but he never became old. He had the blessing from the Supreme Lord himself that you will never become old. The Dhruva Maharaja, we know that in childhood he went to perform austerities, and within 6 months he saw the Lord. His desire was that he wanted the greater kingdom than his grandfather. And the Lord blessed him with many, many things. He said that you will live for so many years, you will never become old, your senses will remain stronger, always you will be youth. So you see that 36,000 years he had a full sensory power to enjoy. And externally it seems to it was looking like he is enjoying material life. Dharma, Artha, Kama. Prabhupada is telling that material life has Dharma, Artha, Kama, three activities, three bodily activities, starting with performing religious duties. Dharma. What are these religious duties? It is described in Vedas as Varnashrama. So each Varna and Ashrama, one has to perform duties like Kshatriya, Vaishya, Sudra, Brahmana, Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, Sannyas. So each Varnashram has their particular duties. So when these duties are performed properly, dharma according to the scriptures, then actually one is blessed with good economic system. It's like when these duties are performed, then rains comes on time, then everything all depends. In Vedic times everything depends on the rain, because from the rain grains will come and there will be prosperity, and there will be natural resources available. So that's how the wealth was increased. The cows will be there. So people were living based on nature. And they also were very strong. So dharma, when dharma is done, then artha comes, economic development comes. And by having economic development, people were able to they were able to fulfill their desires, material desires, kama, dharma, artha, kama. So that's how people were living material life very successfully. So because everything is based on the dharma. Now we see this time we have forgotten dharma. What is dharma? Even so-called dharma also, in name of dharma, we doing lots of adharmic activities. You can see there are so many religious systems, and somewhere it is said, it will be said, oh, meat eating is okay. But then, according to the Varnashram Dharma, this is one of the pillar of sinful activity. That if one, gives pain to other living entities, then it is a sinful activity, because the soul is experiencing this suffering. So we are cause of that suffering. So we go through this tit for tat. It's like there is a laws of nature. Every action has equal and opposite. Every action has equal and opposite reaction. So what we do, we get back. So we cause suffering to others, we get the suffering. So when we do the adharmic activities, then we actually suffer. And instead of that, if we do some dharma, then we will prosper, will experience happiness. So here Dhruva Maharaja, he lived for 36,000 years, and he was living full material, very good material experience. But it's mentioned here that though he seems to be, was looking like he's enjoying, but inside he was enjoying much higher thing. Externally he was looking is a Visai, he is person who is enjoying all the uh, material worldly things. But that was external. Internally he was uh, experiencing much greater happiness, and because of that, since he was experiencing higher taste, he was not attached to all the sensory pleasure. He was detached. It's like when we have better things to do, then we will not be bothered about nitty-gritty things. And he was already experiencing something very, very sublime, very deep, very deep. So he was not externally attached to any material activities. Normally we see when we are situated properly, then we actually get attached to that position and we don't want to give up. It's like the politicians, for example, they don't never want to give up their seat. They just want to continue in their position. For that matter, for everything, we want to continue because we experiencing some happiness and we want to have that continuity. But here it was opposite with Dhruva Maharaja, and how he was able to do, because he was already experiencing deep some inner happiness which was much higher. So externally for all other material pleasure he would be experiencing, he was not at all attached. It's mentioned that he lived for 36,000 years, and as soon as he saw that his son is ready to take over, he immediately put him on the throne and he left. Thereafter, he handed over the charge of the royal throne to his son. So, happiness which we experience inside, actually happiness comes from inside only. From the objects, we think that we will be getting with happiness, but that happiness is just a flickering, doesn't stay. The happiness which we derive from inside is actually the real happiness, and that is experienced by serving the Lord. How we experience that happiness? How we generally experience happiness in our life? Some happiness we experience by eating, or having some sensory experiences. So this is one type of happiness. Another happiness we experience out of our relationship. And we have a very good relationship with someone, and we think about this and we experience happiness. And on opposite, when we have some breakup in that relationship, then we suffer. And this suffering becomes so acute, though all other pleasures are there, same everything is there, but those things becomes very feeble. We even don't bother about that, and people, they go into depression even. So that happiness is Jagannath Baldev Subhadra Maharani ki jai, Nitai Gaur Sundar ki jai. The happiness experienced comes from that relationship, because we are soul, Atma, we are person, we are not impersonal. So as a person, the happiness which we are looking comes from our dealings with other person, the relationship. And actually our real relationship is there with the Supreme Lord, and all the relationship is relative. So we can see that in all phases, in all different relationships, at one point of time there are going to be surely a breakup. How? Either we will give up this body, because our relationship is based on this body. So either we give up the body, or the person gives up the body and goes away. So there is a breakup in that relationship. But our relationship with the Lord is permanent, eternal. So that is the real relationship. Prabhupada is writing in Krishna book that uh, there are different types of love. In one type of love, actually, uh, something is done in expectation of return. Like we see this so-called friendship. When we do something, then we expect that, okay, I've done this, later he will do for me this. And that relationship is also based on that kind of exchange. In fact, this is not love at all. Prabhupada explains that it is not love, so-called friendship. It is just a business, but it goes on the name of love. uh, and second kind of things, the service is done, and there is no exchange of things, but there is some expectation is there. So this actually this love is better than previous one. Previous one is not considered love at all. It is business, pure business, because there is this whole relationship is based on exchange. But this is, there is no exchange, but there is some expectations. How we can understand this? We see that parents, they do so much for their children. From their childhood, they are just doing everything, and they are not doing this for some exchange. But they have expectations. When the child will grow up, when we will become old, the child will take care of us. So some expectation is there, or he will bring a good name and fame to us. So let's have some expectations is there. So this is much better than earlier one. But what is real love? The real love is where the person who is receiving the service, he does not need it at all, but still he receives that services out of that loving relationship. There's no exchange and there's no expectations. It is pure unalloyed love, and that love is only possible with Parabrahman, Paramatma, between the relationship of Atma and Paramatma. We see how the Lord is reciprocating with the living entities. He is facilitating in all walks of life, in all affairs. The Lord, as Paramatma, He is facilitating all material affairs. Does He need anything from the soul? There is nothing He needs from the soul. He is Atmaram. The Lord is Atmaram. He is self-satisfied. There are thousands and thousands of Lakshmi just waiting to serve Him on His command, on His desire. He doesn't have anything which He may need from the soul. But still, the Lord, He is simultaneously facilitating all the living entities in their all affairs. Why He is doing that? Because the Lord really loves living entity. And on other hand, we see that the living entities, when they are trying to serve the Lord also, they have so much of demands. Generally, people come to temple, they bring some coconut, something offer, and they have this thing, this desire to be fulfilled, that desire to be fulfilled, unlimited desires. But the Lord is not doing anything out of these things, these expectations or exchange. He's just purely facilitating living entity because He loves them. And the similar reciprocation is actually should be done from a living entity's side also. Then that is the devotional service. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that Suhidam Sarvabhutanam, I am the only well-wisher of the living entities. Because all others will have some expectations, need of some exchange, because nobody is Atmaram. Only the Lord is only Atmaram. He is self-sufficient, fully independent. So the Lord is only the real well-wisher. And so-called material love, friendship, is all actually in one sense is facilitated by the Lord. It's like a child is born. hmm, He doesn't decide who his mother and father is. He's born in some family. So who decides for the child? So it's decided by the nature under the supervision of the Lord. And the parents are there and they take care of a child, and if the parents are not there, someone else takes care. That like that it grows. The Lord is facilitating even for even small ants, how they are surviving, big elephants, how they are surviving. Everyone is surviving, they are living good life. So the Lord is taking care for all the jivas, all the living entities. So he is the real well-wisher. So we are discussing about the happiness. Happiness is experienced from our relationship. So when we uh, actually invest in material relationship, at one point of time we have to be disappointed, surely, and we cannot be fully satisfied because it is not based on pure love. It's based on expectations, exchange, which will which we may not be able to fulfill. So there will be dissatisfaction. So this material relationship actually doesn't give the happiness which we are searching. We can experience our happiness only when we establish our relationship with the Lord, Supreme Lord Krishna. And he is completely capable of reciprocating uh, simultaneously with all the living entities. In fact, the Lord is waiting for that. When the jivas will look back towards me, we know that there is Svetaswatra Upanishad, this verses comes, there is on this tree of a body there are two birds sitting, Atma and Paramatma, and one bird is fully occupied by eating the fruit of the tree, and the other bird is simply watching. So the bird which is eating is called soul, and the bird which is watching is super soul. So he is watching, then when this soul will look back towards me. For time immemorial, the Lord is patiently watching. So here we see that Dhruva Maharaja was put into that situation where he has to live for a very long time, but he was just waiting, eagerly waiting when I'll go back and unite with the Lord. And he was very eager to go back to Godhead. So it's very important that we develop this desire to go back to Godhead. Therefore, this material world is also designed in such a way that we won't stay here. They are filled with miseries, dukkhalayam. But still, the uh, desire for sense gratification is so strong that even though all the living entities they suffer, but they are not able to give up this desire. They are just continuing there from one material bodily experience to another type of material bodily experiences like this from time immemorial. There's so strong desires that we are not able to give up. And I was hearing a lecture of His Holiness Radha Govind Maharaj. He was narrating this incident. He went to Maharaj is preaching in Bihar and all this village. One village he went to preach, and then he met with one old lady. She is 96, 100 years old, and she is suffering actually. Body has become old. So she always complaining to her relatives that seems that Yamaraja has forgotten me. His letter is not coming for me. Means his call is not coming. It's taking everybody, but I am staying back. Then they told Maharaj, this is what he is always telling. Then he is just came next to her and said, you, since the Yamaraja has forgotten letter, don't worry, I'll bring that letter. What you have to do, this is a wire, electrical wire. No, just hold this wire. Immediately the Yamaraja will call you. Then she immediately started pouring, I'll not die like this. Then she started saying, no. So you see that though the living entity is suffering in that body and externally saying that no, I am going to die, I want to die, but still there is a desire to continue in this body. happiness which we are deriving. It said that because of this material desires only, what kind of desires we have, according to that the soul is placed into next body. So this, because of this material desires, the consciousness filled with that kind of material desires, that kind of body is actually developed. Laws of nature facilitates living entity to get that body. That's what Krishna says. Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tyaste ante kalevram tam tam eveti kaunteya sada tad bhava bhavita. So whatever material desires we have at time of death, we'll get that kind of body. We see that even Dhruva Maharaj, even Bharat Maharaj, he had desired, no, was to be with deer, and then he got the deer's body. Be deer and always be with deers only. So it's very important to have desires to serve the Lord. It's what we are trying to chant always. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Trying to purify our material desires. Instead of enjoying the matter, we are trying to purify our desires to serve the Lord, Supreme Lord. This is how sincerely we chant, that sincerely will purify our consciousness, and we will also be able to one day, like Dhruva Maharaja, go back to Godhead. That's possible. It's all incidents in Bhagavatam is mentioned here to enlighten us, to give us understanding and hope that it is not just a fairy tale or some imagination or mythology. The great souls, they are going back to Godhead, and it's available for every one of us. We can all go back to Godhead. We can see also presently, by mercy of Lord Chaitanya, so many devotees always thinking and hearing about Krishna, they are going back to Godhead. So same facility is available to us also. Just that we have to be more eager. Gantra Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Patit Pawan Srila Prabhupada ki jai.